Welcome again to this exciting episode of On the Couch. Today we have an incredible woman with us, Vanessa Lynch from the DNA Project. You founded this incredible initiative.
Thank you.
We are very, very, very excited to have you on board and on the couch with us today, and for you to share some of your insight and a little bit about why you started this entire project. I think it's amazing. When I was reading a little bit about you and preparing for this, I just think you're a true inspiration, and that is why I wanted you on our show to share a little of your experiences and everything. The whole thing about this program and what I'm wanting to do is inspire women, to make them feel that they can go out there and achieve anything that they want to be. You know, no matter what their age, they can, as long as they believe it, they can achieve it. And so that's why, you're here, as you are one of those women that I think many people will look up to. Crime in South Africa. Everybody is, oh my gosh. What do you feel about the crime situation at the moment in South Africa?
It's an interesting question because over the last 12 years I've worked with crime so intensely. The project started when my father was murdered, and initially you never think it's going to happen to you, and I've realized that actually most of us are affected by crime. And what's very interesting too is that the minority of South Africans are criminals. The majority of South Africans are great people, and they are being violated by this very small element. I will say, however, that from the time that my father was murdered and just the handling of the crime scene and the use of evidence to link perpetrators to their crimes has actually really improved, and we are seeing through DNA specifically, but through other methodologies, we're seeing so much more accountability taking place with regards to criminals being accountable for their actions, which wasn't happening previously. So whilst crime is out there, accountability is definitely on the increase, and we have a very high rate of reoffending in South Africa, and it's not one crime per criminal, it's the same criminal perpetuating crime. And if we can catch them at a very early stage of their criminal career, we can literally save lives. So I do feel positive in that we are moving in that direction, although we're not there yet.
No, I know, it all takes time, one step at a time, I suppose. How did you start your organisation? You say your dad was murdered. That must have been a terrible experience for you and a terrible thing to go through. I could think of nothing worse. Is that what launched this whole initiative for you?
Absolutely. I was a commercial lawyer at the time of my father's murder. I was very close to him, and it devastated me and it devastated my family. And in fact, I realized at the time that no matter who you are, where you live, when you are violated by crime, or when your family is violated by crime, it is an incredibly devastating experience. And it was through that a few weeks after my father was murdered, the police said, well, we have no evidence and therefore we're going to close the file. And it just didn't sit with me.
No.
And it was at that point that I thought I need to do something about that. So my background in law led me to research various methodologies that they were using overseas, and DNA came up as one of the most valuable forms of forensic evidence. It's not the only form of evidence, but the most valuable form of forensic evidence. And when I looked at South Africa, I realized we didn't have appropriate DNA laws, that we didn't have accountability in terms of linking criminals to their crimes through a database which contains DNA profiles. I realized that this is something that I could change, and that's when I launched into this project,
which has been a while and quite a handful, I can believe.
No, it's been many years of hard work and dedication and passion.
But that's wonderful. I think, by you coming in with that passion, you're already changing and assisting in so many arrests and people's lives and helping in so many ways.
I hope so. I often go to international conferences and I ask them, do you have a problem where we have perpetrators raping 9-month-old children? I can't sleep at night with that.
No.
I feel like if I can do something to prevent that in the future, or stop people from continuously violating young children and women's lives and people's lives, then yes, I hope I am making a difference.
And that is so needed, because it's just shocking what's the crime and what goes on, not only in South Africa,
in that area, because there are no extenuating circumstances in the case of a rape of a child, and forensic DNA evidence is so valuable there. So yes, I think there's still a lot more that can be done, but certainly it's encouraging to know that we have this
wonderful.
This act now. That's
It's
going
wonderful.
To be
And tell me a bit about the DNA Act.
So the DNA Act. Well, I lobbied for many years. I lobbied the government to.
Yes.
We didn't have adequate laws that enabled us to create a forensic DNA database to collect a mandatory collection of DNA profiles from convicted offenders and arrestees. And in doing so, you build up the size of your database, much the same as we do with fingerprints, and you continuously compare those DNA profiles to profiles collected from the crime scene. And in violent crimes, I mean, if I think about my father's crime scene, there was blood, there was hair, could have been on his clothing, sweat, skin cells. There's so many sources of biological evidence left on crime scenes. So we don't have to look for one fingerprint. We actually have a plethora of evidence that we can access. And in that comparative search, you not only are picking up serial offenders, even if you haven't yet got a suspect, but many years later you could arrest somebody for an unrelated offence and link them back to those other offences. So the DNA Act was needed in order to make it mandatory to collect. We weren't able to collect profiles from convicted offenders and arrestees, and we didn't have an adequate regulatory framework to collect samples and then analyse them and put them into a DNA database.
How do you collect the DNA now? Is it that
very
swab
simply
in the mouth?
from a reference sample from an arrestee or a convicted offender is a simple cheek swab, a buccal swab it's called, and a trained police officer is able to do that. And then obviously crime scene samples are collected by the crime scene experts, and that is a continuous challenge, because crime scene awareness, not only from the police, from their perspective, but if I think about my dad's crime scene, friends and family cleaned up the crime scene before we got back from the hospital, because my dad had survived a few hours, and everything had been cleaned up. The hospital threw away his clothing, and we know that the majority of evidence is on the transfer of evidence onto clothing. So it's a public awareness, and people often say, well, what can I do to help? Be educated, become aware, understand that rubbernecking and walking onto a crime scene is actually not helpful.
No, it doesn't at all.
So you have one chance,
exactly. Evidence,
you have one chance to collect evidence, so we need to preserve it.
And the National Forensic and Oversight Ethics Board that you sit on, give us a little brief overview of that.
It's a very unique board in that it drives implementation of the Act. So there are various provisions in the Act that have been implemented in order to ensure that we collect as many profiles as possible, because obviously the larger the database, the more effective it is as a criminal intelligence tool. And there's also an ethical oversight element, because even though a forensic DNA profile doesn't give away any personal information about you, it's 16 regions or loci in your DNA that are specifically chosen because they have no information related to them. But the unique combination of those numbers in your DNA profile is enough to identify you. It's a unique identifier as an individual.
It's like a fingerprint, everyone has
even
their
more
own.
so, exactly.
Much more.
So in that way, it's still private information in that it's your profile, but there is no private information such as behavioural or physical characteristics other than the sex, male or female. And it does require ethical oversight. So we do receive, as an oversight board, a number of queries. Have you expunged my profile? Because if it's not a conviction, you have to remove that profile after a certain amount of time. Or perhaps there's some, if there is any threat of abuse, we would oversee that, but there never has been. So there's two aspects to it. It's driving implementation, making sure that all of the police are being trained, that they are collecting samples, that the forensic services are analysing, and then obviously as a complaints body.
Sure. So I can't believe how much you've actually achieved and done. You've done an incredible amount of work.
Thank you.
Really.
A lot more to be done, but yes, thank you.
But like we say, one step at a time.
Absolutely.
And all of that sort of thing, but already you've achieved so much. So I believe that you've secured the subject outline for law students. I think that is incredible for the DNA.
Yes, law's always been close to my heart, and initially we had many projects on the go with the DNA project, crime scene awareness and lobbying for the DNA Act, and we realised that skills were a very important part, and there wasn't actually a specific career path that you could follow in forensic analysis. So we developed an honours course in forensic analysis, which was a science degree. But then when we started training magistrates and public defenders and prosecutors in the DNA Act and what DNA was all about, I realised that we needed to do this from the bottom up too. So we approached a couple of universities, and we have a module, the 6-month elective, which the students are loving.
Oh, they would love it. I would love it. I think it's so interesting, incredible,
Yes.
because watching on TV, for example, crime and all of that, there's so much in the forensic line
There is.
that I absolutely
There
found
is.
so fascinating. Tell me about your grandmother, I should say. I believe she was quite a lady.
She was a very eccentric lady. I'm originally from Kenya, and she remained there, and we visited her many times. And she was a difficult lady. By no means when I say that she was inspirational. She was inspirational in a different sort of a way. She wasn't your regular grandmother. She was Nana, but she had incredible foresight. And I mentioned to you that she spoke of global warming in the 70s, and she spoke of being, she used to shout at the boats coming past, saying the Chinese are fishing taking all the fish out of my sea, and she had colobus monkeys in her jungle where she lived that she used to protect. So she was an incredibly astute lady, but she was also a dynamic lady. She was a businesswoman, and she headed up Dorothy Gray, and in those days, it was quite unique for a woman to be so forthcoming. So for many reasons, she was
somebody I'd love to have met.
Very much so. She was interesting.
Gosh.
I mean, in her 80th birthday, she danced on the table.
Oh my goodness!
She was a fabulous dancer.
I can imagine myself doing that.
Yeah.
But you never know.
Yeah, no, she was great fun. She was great fun.
Lovely.
And, but
what
also,
a wonderful woman.
Yeah, no, she was
very
she was
unusual.
amazing. Yeah.
And in what way? A little bit more serious now. Do you believe that you have made a difference, or going forward, will you make a difference in South Africa on the crime side, or with the DNA and all of that you work with?
It's a difficult question to answer because crime is so insidious, and you never really on the ground level see what you've done. But I like to believe, and having seen how many cases are now being solved through DNA and through linking them through the DNA database, that it's actually the lives that are being saved in the future that I could have helped. And it's the serial rapists who stop before they can rape or kill the next woman, or hurt the next child, or murder the next family member.
Yes.
And that gives me hope going forward, that there's, through accountability, that maybe I can't prevent the first act, but certainly when you can stop someone from continuing it. It is something that I hope to
No, and I think you've definitely taken more than one step in that direction.
Thank you.
Really.
Thank you very much.
And if you could wish anything, if I could say to you, okay, here's a magic wand, you can make one wish, what would it be?
A personal wish, or for the nation?
For the nation of South Africa, for the women of South Africa.
I think that there's one aspect that I've always taken forward, and I would wish this for everybody, is believe in yourself. I have never doubted myself, and it's something that maybe is in some ways has caught me up, and one has to be careful. But I truly believe, I believed when I took this on, that even my mother said to me, Vanessa, you're fighting against thunder. Well,
yes.
There I was. But the point is, I never doubted myself. And through a lot of adversity, and through a lot of doubt, and through a lot of people telling me alternative things to what I wanted to do, I adjusted it along the way, because you have to. So don't be so dogmatic that you take one path and you never stray from it. But if you believe in something so passionately, you can do it. You can do anything that you want to do. So my wish is for, no matter what your circumstances are, no matter what your belief is, no matter how far-fetched it is, if you believe in it, you can and you will do it.
That's wonderful. Oh, what a woman. Vanessa, thank you so much for being with us today on the couch with me. And it's just been so inspirational for me to chat to you and to learn a little bit about the work that you do and the people's lives that you're touching. Thank you so much for joining us. And once again, as you can hear with our amazing new friend of mine, Vanessa, we really want to thank her for being with us. And it's all about, like I say, this whole program is about women empowerment, about believing in yourself. Because if you get out there and you believe it, I know you can achieve it. Thank you.
We could fly.